Good morning. Welcome to Old Man Energy. Today, we are going to be talking about the Constitution and the U.S. government. There's been a lot of talk here recently because of the elections. Whether you agree with the results or not, everybody is curious if they don't already know about what's going on. I hadn't intended to do another one, but some of the misinformation and just some of the confusion that I've seen out there made me want to get on here and talk a little bit about what's going on. I saw a post the other day that really concerned me. It was by someone out of California. You'll have to forgive me. I don't know for sure who it was, but it was a meme that had a picture of California and several other states, and it said maybe white slave owners weren't the best people to make a government for a country this large or something thereof. There's a couple different versions of it floating around. It had California highlighted, said 2 senators, and then it had several other states highlighted and counted and added their total of their senators up, whichever version of these you're looking at. And that was it. No context, no background, no nothing. The level of ignorance that was associated with that post was just disgusting, because if you don't understand the way our government works and how it was put together by our founding fathers, then that looks like a very inflammatory statement. Well, it is a inflammatory statement, but it looks like a very out of balance thing, and it's not fair. It's shooting information down. It's obfuscating information, making something look like it's not. So I'm going to give you the top 5 things that you need to know about our government and make it as interesting as possible. I'm not going to drag it out. It's not history class. It's not civics class. But these are things you absolutely need to know. Our government, our country, was founded almost 250 years ago with the Declaration of Independence. Now, before that, there was the Magna Carta. There was other governing documents that have influenced us over the years, but they're not really relevant to this discussion. You should read them. You should know what they say, and you should know why they were important. But they're not relevant to what we're talking about today. So we're going to start with the Declaration of Independence. The first thing about the Declaration of Independence is it was a declaration by the states for the independence from England. Now, there was an opinion, and whether you can debate whether it was a popular opinion, an unpopular opinion at the time of the people. It was a rebellion against taxes, so to speak. I mean, the famous Boston Tea Party is one of the most egregious examples. There were other things that were being done at that time, and you can look at the makeup of the population of the country at the time, things like that. But understand, if you take it from there, the states were the ones that declared independence from England and said we were no longer a colony of England. This was a huge deal at the time, effective treason, for lack of a better term. So understand the decision that these people were making and that these states were making on behalf of their populations. But the reason that the states are important is because we were always designed to be a confederation of states. And one thing during that time that the states were afraid of was the absolute tyranny of a centralized government. The Constitution, and this is the second point, the Constitution that we follow today and that guides our government and our laws today was not the first set of articles that governed us, that took a place, that made us who we are. The first set of laws that were put in place by the First Continental Congress, which was a representative from the state, was the Articles of Confederation. This gave the central federal government very little power, did not allow for quick or decisive decisions to be made to defend the country, basically was more of an agreement of how the states were going to get along. This was in place for several years, and the Second Continental Congress, which is ultimately where the Constitution came from, was not designed to write a new set of laws. It was designed to fix the old ones so that we could properly defend ourselves. Because since the Declaration of Independence and the end of the Revolutionary War, there had been constant wars, small wars, myriads of wars, different fighting over and over again in the different states. And we had no mechanism for us to help each other and to defend each other large scale. So the Second Continental Congress decided to scrap the Articles of Confederation and start over. And that's where the Constitution came from. And it's known as a Great Compromise because it was designed to protect the minority while giving the central federal government the power to defend the majority and to protect this new fledgling nation. Again, it was representative of the states that did this. Now, they put things in place at the time that made things easier for them because of it being in a gregarian society and not instantly connected with information. But they also put things in place that would ensure that the protection of the minority was in place as well, because that was a real central point of the tyranny. They were tired of being pushed around by England. And some of the articles inside the Constitution talk about this, like quartering soldiers at that time. England would just come into your house and say you had to keep a soldier in your house, whether he was a good person, a bad person, whatever. They would just tell you what to do. And so there's certain things in there that are designed to protect us from that. You'll hear a lot of times that we're referred to as a democracy. We are not a democracy. We are a constitutional republic based on a democratic voting system. Now that has changed over the years, and I want to touch base on a couple of those things as far as that goes. The Constitution is designed and written not only to protect the minority and give enough power for the majority, but for the protection of the majority and us as a country, but also it's designed to be self-repairing and an evolving document so that it can be adapted to whatever happens in modern days and times during society. Thus the amendment process, thus the laws, and up to and even including the fifth and the most important piece of this document, which I'll talk about here in a minute. But the fourth point I want to make during this talk is the Constitution divides the federal government into, we talk about three branches. We talk about the executive branch, the judicial branch, and the legislative branch. And the legislative branch is divided into two branches. They all serve a different purpose. The executive branch is designed to represent all of the states as a unified country and to defend us but from enemies external and within. You can see the intention of this if you read the Federalist Papers, which were written by the founding fathers, the authors of the Constitution. They're just articles that were published in newspapers and in books at that time, explaining and basically trying to teach the population what the Constitution meant in an effort to get it ratified. So you have the executive branch, which is not the leader of everything, but it's the face of our country. It's the highest elected representative. And remember, folks, these are not our leaders. These are our representatives. They are sent there to represent different pieces of our structure as a country. And that's going to be important later, especially given the meme that I referenced at the beginning. So the executive branch, I won't touch on that anymore. We know what that is. That's the president, and that's his cabinet, which is not defined in the Constitution. The cabinet is a precedent established by Washington to put people in place to help him run the country, because they realized very quickly that one person could not do everything that was required of that position. So you have the legislative branch, which is made up of the House of Representatives and the U.S. Senate. And this is relevant to the meme I talked about earlier. The House of Representatives is designed to represent the population. Originally, per the Constitution, it would increase number of seats based on population. That was capped at 438. And then as population grows, it is redistricted every 10 years based on the Senate, based on the census, so that we don't have an ungainly house and we don't end up with 1,000 people representing different folks. So that was capped, but it's still based on population, so that each area, each district represents roughly the same number of citizens across the board, across the country. And the Senate, that's the House of Representatives. The Senate, which is a completely separate body, some people look at the Senate and the House as the same thing. They're often referred to together. They're completely separate. The Senate is made up of specifically 2 senators from each state. And originally, the Senate was only there to represent the states. So you had the House representing the population and the people. You had the Senate representing the rights and the interests of the states. And you had the executive branch representing us as an entire country. And then you have the judicial branch. The only position of the judicial branch is to interpret laws that are passed by either the states or by the Congress and weigh them against the Constitution, the intention of the Constitution, and what the intention of the founding fathers was. They are not there to make law. We hear terms like legislate from the bench or an activist judge. These things should never exist. Judges should simply, precisely interpret the law according to the Constitution, and that's it. And that's what the Supreme Court does. And the reason there are 9 justices on the Supreme Court, and a justice and a judge for layman's terms is the same thing. It's just when the Supreme Court position is called a justice. The reason there's 9 is because there can't be any tie when it comes to that. There has to be a decision that is the highest court in the land, and it is the place where all laws go to be interpreted. If they shut something down, then it does not exist anymore. And if you want that to exist, you have to either justify it per the Constitution and start over, or you don't get to have that particular law in place because they've deemed it unconstitutional. The makeup of this court is very critical, because if you have conservative or liberal leaning justices, who controls the court is determining who interprets the Constitution and how it's interpreted. These things matter. These things are important to the future of the country. And a lot of times during elections, we come up and we say, oh, this is devastating. This is the last election of our time. People are trying to take over, this and that. Remember, this whole system is designed to be slow. It's designed to be inefficient. It's designed, and that's one of the protections that's built into it, to make sure that the needs of the minority are protected. It's also designed to be able to be replaced every 2, 4, or 6 years, depending. Every 2 years, 1/3 of the Senate is replaced. Every senatorial terms are 6 years. This is by design. House representative terms are 2 years, because the needs of the people often change faster than the needs of the states. And the White House is every 4 years, with a term limit of 2 terms, so 8 years. This is to prevent any one person from attempting to become a dictator. This is why your vote matters. Now, let's say that this whole system just goes horribly wrong, like so many people are afraid that it has. There is one more safe hold that's put into the Constitution. This is Article 5. This is the article that talks about a constitutional convention. If the government has become tyrannical or inefficient, or just does not any longer represent the needs of the people or the states can call for a constitutional convention. This has never been enacted. This has never been done. But they can call for a constitutional convention, which can pass amendments and revoke amendments to the Constitution outside of the federal government structure. This is a very radical concept, not only for its time, but for its time now, that actually in our governing documents, we have the ability to overthrow the government legally outside the governmental structure, and outside the governmental structure of voting, or if the whole system has become so corrupt, we still have a safeguard and a way to save it, and a way to save our country without a violent or bloody revolution. Because remember, when all this stuff was going down, we had been at war for pretty near 20 years in one way or another. People were dying, innocent people were dying. People were just tired of the constant bloodshed, of the tyranny of being told what to do. The demographic and the makeup of America at that time, and I still believe at this time, was a bunch of strong-willed, independent people that think for themselves, and that really believe that they were creating the most incredible country on the face of the earth. A lot of people don't believe that anymore. I absolutely believe that. I believe that we have the most unique governing style, and I believe that given proper care and proper information, as long as people understand how our government works, that this government can last 2, 3, 4, 500 years, maybe even longer, however long it must. It is able to be amended and to be grown with throughout those times. Not everybody shares that, but I'm very optimistic when it comes to it. So this has been a brief civics lesson for you guys. I hope this helps. We're going to get back to some regular programming next week. We'll be talking about goals. I'm going to be putting together a couple new projects that I'm excited about. I want to talk to you guys about. But for now, let's sit back. Let's enjoy what's going on, whether we agree with it or not. And if you agree with it, awesome, participate, move forward, start participating at a local level in your government. If you don't agree with what's going on, guess what? Start participating at a local level in your government, start making a difference, and start getting out there and getting ready to make your opinions and your ideas heard. Who knows? It may just resonate with people, and you may just start a revolution. Peaceful, albeit. Love y'all. Peace.